So this is actually a re-recording of the action research piece because I think there was something cut off in it. I want to do this by kind of talking about two projects, really start by talking about two projects that I'm currently working on. So the first one is a focus group project that is a follow-on to a survey. So I have a client that did their organizational survey recently, and they've come back with results where they've seen the trust in the organization drop since the last time they did the survey, and that has been consistently a low area for them for a considerable period of time. If they look back over the last 2 or 3 administrations, it's been a low area for them. And what they've come up against is, well, while we can see that trust in the organization is low because they're responding to those items on the survey saying that no, we really don't have a lot of trust in the organization, it didn't come back to an actionable point. They haven't gotten enough depth of understanding to say, well, here are the ways we can go ahead and fix that. So they've asked us to come in, myself and my business partner, and do some focus groups to meet with a sampling of folks from all levels of the organization, from different areas of the organization, and to really try and learn what is wrong that's causing the trust in the organization to be low. So what's going on that's causing that trust to be low? So what we're going to do is start with trying to figure out what those actionable points are. The questions really are around concrete issues, behavioral issues that they can take some action on to improve that level of trust. Collaboration in the design. We're working with them to figure out who we're going to survey, or excuse me, who we're going to put in the focus groups, how we're going to get them there, how we're going to engage them so that they feel comfortable in giving us information. When we come back with the themes of information, what we hear from those focus groups, we'll sit down with the client and basically try and interpret that into a sense of, well, here's what they were saying. What does that mean from the organization's point of view, and how can we bring that information back in a way that your managers can understand it and do something different with it. So it is a very collaborative process, both in the planning and the analysis phase. The whole purpose of the project kind of speaks to the third bullet point, which is triangulation of information. They have the survey, they have their own experience, they know some things that aren't quite right, and this is kind of that other piece, that third piece, to bring it back and say, okay, let's get deeper and really understand this. So we're hitting the information. We already got 2 points of information. We're going to get a third, so that there's a very clear plan for them to go forward with how to do something different. And if all those go well, it does kind of build to a shared and deeper understanding of what the problem in the organization is and what they can do about it. So that's a good example. I'll give you another not so good example. Also a current project I'm working on. Had a client that is a distributor, and they surveyed all of their branch managers, and they asked their branch managers to tell them about the competition in their marketplace. So they would describe their top competitors and some of the characteristics of those top competitors, and gave a little bit of information about why they were either first in the market or fifth in the market. So why are you at the rank you're at in the market? So they did this survey kind of out of the blue. There was no larger purpose to it. There was no connection for their branch managers as to what was going to happen to it. But they did know enough to say, well, we'll give you the feedback and we'll tell you what's going to happen next with this information. So there was a desire for action, but it wasn't clear up front what that action was going to be. Well, they called me because I had done a little bit of work for them in the past, and when they got to the point where they were doing the analysis, they kind of stopped and said, well, how are we going to analyze this? How are we going to turn this into something that's useful for the organization? And they were stuck. So that's how I got involved. Where they were, they didn't have an actionable plan. They just kind of said, oh, we were interested in this information, let's go out and get it. And then after the fact, they went, well, what questions can we answer? How can we use this? What good can we get from this? So they didn't have that plan up front. While they were trying to gather information from their branch managers, there were no branch managers involved in the design or the interpretation or the feedback or how it's going to be used. It was done kind of by an off-alone group within the organization that saw a need and saw it with good intent and good heart, but did not bring others into the process. Only after the fact now have we brought others in, since I've been coming along with them. Their head of sales, their head of marketing, some other folks coming in to say, how can we take advantage of this opportunity with this data and this information? So they kind of missed the boat there. Triangulation of information, we're in the middle of that. They did that, sort of, and I smile when I say that, because one of the things and one of the rules that they kind of violated there is there was information available from their distributors about market rank. And there's kind of a rule within organizational research: if you can get the data somewhere else that you don't have to ask people, and it's real data, not perceptual data, go do that. And I will say that's not sometimes you want to do both, because you want to see where they mismatch and go, okay, we think we're great, but we're not. And that's sometimes a good thing, but that's really not what they were trying to do. So they missed the triangulation opportunity. End of the game, we're now trying to back up and say, how can we put some of these pieces back in there and figure out where we're going? And we're doing okay. There are some salvage options here, but the challenge we ran into is once we started to talk about actions, the actions grew from just a survey to, well, how do we incorporate this into the sales planning process? How do we incorporate it into the branch process? And now, after we're kind of pretty far down the road, we're bringing those other folks in and saying, hey, we see a need here. How can we turn this into a valid or a valuable process and go forward with it and incorporate it into those bigger pictures? So the action now is becoming clear, but it's a lot harder to do now than if we had planned at the. So a couple of things just kind of take away from those two examples. Focused on immediate practical problems. There were real problems with trust. That's real and concrete. There's real need to know where you are against your competitors. Also real and concrete. How does that expand scientific knowledge? Well, in the trust one, there may be an opportunity. The second one's not a great example, so I don't know there's much chance there. But the trust one, certainly expanding the scientific knowledge within the organization. And that being, what is it that really is important to our employees that drives trust? Let's use that longer term, not just today, but over a longer period of time, to understand what that trust issue is and what trust is driven by in our organization. So scientific knowledge with a small s, for us, it's our knowledge of ourselves that expands over one point in time into longer points in time. Action research concerned with organizational change, absolutely. I think that's clear from both examples. There's a need to drive change and a desire to. Some planned well, some planned not so well. And then there is a collaboration between the researchers and practitioners. For the focus groups, we have to go back to the internal folks and our clients and say, help us understand what this means. We're actually taking the surveys back to the employees and say, here's the results. Help us understand what this means and where this fits in your mindset for why you're satisfied or not so satisfied to be here. Last piece, action research, just some key points. It is a process, not an event. I'll take the first one, my second example with the distributorship, and say they were treating it more like an event than a process. We'll just do a survey, and it didn't think through the bigger process and where it fits. Whereas the first example they are taking is a process. We do a survey on a regular basis. We don't have a deep understanding from that survey what to do, so let's go to the next step and do what we need to do. Clearly defining objectives. Certainly, the bad example is a better case here. If we're backing up to figure out what those objectives are, we probably could have avoided some of the challenges that we're working on and facing now. Development of buy-in from stakeholders. The employee survey that they've found the trust issues. There are many stakeholders that they had to engage, but right off the top, they're engaging in senior management because the survey was quite an expensive undertaking, so they had to get approval and budget to do that. And honestly, they came back, and when they're bringing us into the focus groups, they've gone back to senior managers and said, we need this additional activity to understand what's going on, so we need a budget to do that as well. So that's kind of buy-in from the stakeholders at the top. As we go into those focus groups, it's up to us to develop some trust from the folks giving us feedback. So that's another group of stakeholders that if we don't get them bought in, the information we get is going to be of little use or probably of poor quality and of little use. So how do we communicate with them? How do we make it easy for them to participate? How do we make sure it's safe for them so that whatever they tell us doesn't come back and hurt them in any way? So we got to think about buy-in from a number of groups, and those are just two examples. A second ago, I just mentioned safety. It is critically important that when you gather information within an organization, whoever gives you that information back is safe. They do not suffer from sharing with you. And that means that the information is, if it's confidential, they need to know it's confidential, which means they're individually identifiable, but there's somebody who's going to stand as the I'm not going to tell person, so I won't let that information pass. And there's also anonymity, which means I don't know who you are, so I can't trace it back to you. So we need to make sure that we're clear about what those contracts are, right? And that in any case, even if we've assured anonymity and confidentiality, that we would do everything in our power to make sure that there's not a negative repercussion on the people who give us information. And then lastly, steps to create quality. That's a lot of what we'll talk about in this course. How do we do this well so that we get good information? How do we do it in such a way that we can rather confidently say, here's what's going on. We're not sure, but there's enough evidence that we can be confident in the conclusions and the recommendations we're presenting to the organization. So that's a little bit on action research with a couple of examples, and we will kind of go into depth on quite a few of those issues as we go forward throughout the semester.